It's no secret President Trump's favorite form of communication is Twitter. He uses the platform for announcements, to defend himself, and to criticize American businesses. Recently, one of those companies was Nordstrom's after the retailer dropped his daughter Ivanka's clothing line. Businesses that have yet to tangle with Trump on Twitter are fearful they could be next. Now, many of them are turning to PR companies and consultants to prepare for that possibility. One person some of those companies are turning to is crisis consultant Dr. Rob Fazio. He's the executive advisor of On Point Advising, and he joins us now. Welcome to the program. The president has over 25 million followers on Twitter, and in just 140 characters, he can dispatch a PR nightmare for any company he chooses. Doctor, is this practical for every company to have a Trump Twitter plan, as we're calling it?
It is practical, and more importantly, it's essential for business continuity. You never know what type of crisis is going to come up, and so you really need to have a plan for each and all those crises so it doesn't have such a big impact on your business.
You know, a year ago, United Technologies announced it would be moving its Indiana factory over to Mexico. That Carrier air conditioning plant employed 1,400 people. Trump attacked them on Twitter, and we all know now, eventually Carrier and Trump worked out a deal to keep them in the United States. Should companies cave to Trump when he calls them out?
It's not about caving to Trump. There's a couple of key philosophies. One of them is to show some subtle strength. So you don't have to really go up against him. It's actually better to, if you're invited to a conversation, have it with him. And then the other thing is that don't get caught up in the Twitter sphere and the fight around Twitter. Have an op-ed or have something prepared so you create the narrative as opposed to him creating the narrative.
So in other words, you want to be in charge.
Exactly. You want to be in charge of your story, stick to your values, stick to your value proposition, stick to what your customers want and need, and you don't have to go after Trump to do that.
How do you think Nordstrom's handled their situation? They yanked Ivanka Trump's clothing line, citing poor sales. They denied politics were involved in their decision. Do you think Nordstrom's went about that situation in the right way?
I do. I think that is a classic case of what to do. So they stuck to the facts as opposed to feelings. They didn't get personal. They weren't talking about Donald Trump. They talked about their sales growth and how it's declined. And if you look at their history, if something declines, it comes off the shelves. So I think they did a great job with that.
Should companies take political stances for or against Trump, or do you think that they're better off just staying out of it completely?
Staying out of it completely. If you take a political stance, it might feel good for a little while, but even if you have crowds of people that are employees that are really happy, there could be a silent majority that isn't happy but is afraid to speak up. So stay away from politics and stick to what your values are and stick to what your customers need.
Now, Lyft opposed Trump's executive order and pledged $1 million to the American Civil Liberties Union. And on the other hand, Uber CEO acknowledged concerns but said he would raise the issue at a meeting, kind of, receiving some backlash for taking a backseat approach. In this case, is it more costly for these more high-profile companies to ignore politics altogether?
It's not. I think it is better actually to not get engaged in the political conversation and keep it about the professional conversation. And some mistakes I have seen made is where people will kind of enter in the conversation and then jump out. So by having a plan in place where if you are attacked, you can talk through what is important to you and your customers. You don't even have to actually address the tweet or what the attack is. That's the beauty of having a plan ahead of time.
We recently saw several businesses close or have limited menus or limited things going on at their business for a day without immigrants. That day also affected Trump. Restaurants inside his hotels were forced to offer a limited menu. Do you think that businesses that partook in that day were correct to do so? Or do you think that could have a backlash on their business in the future?
I can't really judge right or wrong. What I can say is oftentimes people go with their emotions in the moment, and why that may feel good for the short term, it might be good for the long term. What we know about President Trump is if you take him on personally and you go after him, you're not likely to win. So he always gives the advice of if you're dealing with a bully, punch him in the face. And that's actually the worst advice that you can give. because if a boxer can punch harder than you, you're going to get knocked down. So it's better to sidestep, pivot, and take a different strategy.
Okay, well, there you have it. Yahoo Finance identified 61 companies or brands Trump has bashed on Twitter. Who will be next? Well, nobody really knows, perhaps not even Trump. Dr. Rob Fazio, great having you on with us tonight.
Thanks, Danielle.